What's up, guys? Urijah Faber here. Just about to do this interview.
Mr. Faber. Mr. Faber in the house.
I've done interviews with those guys plenty of times in the past, and always a good time, man.
You got a weird drink?
I've got a weird drink and I've got an unopened Malot. This is what it looks like when Andre the Giant would hold a beer can or a full whiskey bottle.
Here to talk shop and have a good time.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Let's get this. Let's get it.
Service Diaries. Let's go, baby.
Well, there are 3 dads in this room. 2 of them are washed, and one of them is an MMA legend. Can you figure out which one's which? That's Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, and this, welcome to Room Service Diaries, is Urijah Faber. Urijah Faber, everybody. Round of applause. Let's hear it for him.
Thanks for inviting me to your room. It's kind of weird.
Yes, welcome to our room.
Yo, we class things up.
At least there's one girl in here. You guys are pretty standard for you guys. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys, 1 girl. No big deal.
You know, we had Michael Chiesa on this couch, and you know, he might be a great fighter, but he's a dirt hole proper like one of us. We classed it up with Mr. Faber right now.
Yeah, he's better than us.
You know what I'm saying?
How you doing, Urijah?
I've been good, man.
Dude, you stay busy. It's just from one lane to the next, but it's just a switch. It never seems to slow.
Yeah, I'm kind of wired like that. I feel like I need to just keep things moving, and I get antsy if I don't have enough going on, and the kids.
Dude, congratulations! You have. I mean, you put them on social media. I see you have beautiful family, man.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun, man. Those kids are the best. So, Rome is now 20, little over 20 months, and Callie's, 3 years and a couple months. And
yeah, but you were telling Luke
running the show,
and this will break his heart again.
I know
that since became a dad, your wife gave.
By the way, I just want to point out before you finish, he's the only dad I've ever heard this from. I believe him, but it's just crazy.
Better sleep now. I mean, Luke can't keep his daughter out of his room. Luke, some people have given tips, like maybe just put that foot down.
Yeah, these people can shut the fuck up. Okay. They don't know what they're talking about. See, we put our daughter down in the other room, but I don't want to lock the door, so she does the whole Velociraptor Jurassic Park bit, turns the knob, and then she comes into the bed at 2 a.m., and then she just, it's kung fu fighting. She's kicking and punching.
That's
you guys
great.
have to deal with any of that?
I actually, they're still co-sleeping for the most part. So if they don't go down with me, they'll go in their own beds and then come in with me, but I'm fine with it. And so, that's what helped. But that's what I'm saying. I get more sleep now than I ever did because, like you said, I'm going all the time. My brain, it's hard to shut off. And maybe I have just more of an ease about like a more contentness going on.
You're happy. Yeah, dude, you're happy.
On top of like less of a hustle and less, not less ambitious, but just makes you prioritize things better. Yeah. And so I can sleep better. I'll pass out. It's terrible for my teeth because, like I said, I pass out without brushing my teeth all the time.
BC too.
And I told my dentist, I'm like, dude, we need to do something about this. But it's been great, man. It's been awesome. And
times change, awesome. Urijah, but you're timeless, dude. And you came in with the gimmick and it worked and it was who you are. You're still that dude, man. I mean, you're not far removed from still being a very competent UFC fighter at the same time. It's like there is something ageless about your longevity. You still have that youthful spirit. I mean, there's a cheat code into your genetics.
Yeah.
Somehow,
Maybe. I think it's from my parents. My dad is like Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. I get more jokes about the 50-year-old skateboarder than anything from, since Conor McGregor said that. And I was like, my dad, he's 69, but he's more the 50-year-old retired skateboarder.
Love it. Well, look, part of my times change joke was that, PC standards change. We have to correct and update. And obviously, dude, we're like the same age here. So the California kid may have to go despite his branding potential. I'm going to be 44 in July, okay? So I'm an old piece of shit.
Okay.
So I'm thinking we just graduate to the California dad, no harm, no foul. Team Alpha male, great gym, but in this day and age, we may have to go Team Alpha non-binary gender, and I think that'll work on a T-shirt.
I already changed it. It's Team Alpha MMA.
Oh, that's right.
And we've got...
the website still says Team Alpha Male, right?
Well, the Instagram, you can't change the Instagram.
And then you lose your
thing.
Yeah.
But it's Team Alpha MMA.
There it is.
We have alpha males, we have alpha females, we have alpha whatever you are.
There it is. Changing with the times, but still the same. All
right? I was thinking about this the other day. Are you glad you came up in the era of MMA you came up in? Because you look at MMA today, and it's unrecognizable from when you got in it. Obviously, you had a ton of success. It was hardly some failed venture. But I guess I'm wondering, now that you see it from an older perspective and how everything's changed, would you want to be starting out in this era, or are you glad you started out in the era that you did?
From a monetary standpoint, I see both sides of it. Obviously, getting the prize, being the best fighter in the world at this point in mixed martial arts space, it would be the ideal thing to do it now. But I was also a pioneer back then, so I got to experience everything that's happened in MMA and have businesses along the way, and I've worn every type of hat. It makes me like a real expert. I've been, the poster boy. I've been the champion, the contender, like had slides. I've been a manager. I've owned clothing companies. I've done, entertainment stuff, and all along the way, I'm managing guys. So had multiple gyms, and so I've learned so much, and for me that was pretty valuable in the big scheme of things. So I'm glad. No regrets.
No regrets.
Not even one letter.
We call a lot of people a legend, and sometimes they're not a legend. We just heard one of our guys in the background go, Urijah was the first guy I really gravitated towards when I first started watching MMA.
He's a Showtime boxing guy.
And so many people still say that today. So, do you kind of get off on that? I was kind of like a day one. You were the first star of the lower weight classes for sure in MMA, but you were people's entry point into this game across the board. Does that still resonate with you?
It does. I mean, I hear that a lot, especially for females or older women. Like my mom loved you, like that kind of thing. Like 7-year-old women. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool, I guess. Not ideal, but I was friendly enough and said hi to my mom enough, and I never got bloodied up or gory, on my side at least. Maybe that was part of it, but I think the history of how the WEC was resurrected from a show on the Indy Casino to bought by UFC, Zuffa basically, and then it was to free TV, and then I was the hot ticket at that time.
Face of it, yeah.
And they had just rebranded the outdoor channel to Versus, and so it went from people rowing boats in the ocean and bike riding to this combat show. And so Versus was promoting just WEC cage fighting, and they didn't have much of the programming at the time. And then I was the main guy there, so my fights were playing all the time for free. And that wasn't the case back then with the UFC. It was a lot of pay-per-view cards, and it was harder to get a hold of. So my fights were just playing and playing and playing. So I think that helped out a lot too.
Also, I wanted to jump in and not lose this moment. When you were that guy 15 years ago, the face of non-heavyweight MMA, the face of the WEC, was it hard not to start living the rock star lifestyle and drinking your own juice at that point? I mean, I know you're probably not making the money that allowed you to say fuck you, but at the same time, did you live it up outside of the cage?
Well, you probably know the story, but at the time, I was nose to the grindstone. It wasn't like I'm out. And I remember I had a buddy, one of my best friends, who's biggest supporter, big hater. He'd be we lived together when I lost the title for Mike Brown, and he gave me the silent treatment in my own house. Wow. That's how much he loved me, but also was emotionally a mess. And so
as a married man, look, we know that. We've been through that.
Yeah. So he's I'd be see him in the hallway at the house, and he's like, what's up? I'm
that's a little shitty though, right?
Well, it wasn't his fault. He's emotionally, wasn't right, couldn't handle that I had lost and whatnot. So, at that time, he was telling me, you need to go to this gym, and you need to go to that gym, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And for me, I was just I'm building it here. I'm going to be here and create something that is bigger than me. And that was more my focus that time. It wasn't about going and living it up. I was building a team and building setting the rubrics for what it is now, or the team that we have now, and the setting that we have across the globe. I mean, the team is known across the world, in Japan and China and Brazil. Our team is one of the biggest teams on the planet, so I'm pretty proud of that.
I mean, they didn't have DMs back then, but they were probably knocking. They were probly knocking on the door. Look, let's be fair, okay?
To be fair, I've never had an issue with females, and in junior high school, it wasn't it was a weird thing. So it wasn't all of a sudden I'm oh my gosh, now there's a bunch of females. I was focused.
Right, we can't imagine a reality like that for ourselves. That's
why do these nerds always ask me the same question?
He's it just never really changed. Right. See, for us, it would be a big difference. You see what I'm saying?
Well, see, all right. Well, I was able to stay focused.
Yes, I understand that. It's interesting that you never left Sacramento. There are certain guys, Greg Jackson was I'm in Albuquerque, you're in Sacramento. Some of the guys from South Florida were from there. Obviously, they have a lot of transplants. Was there ever a time where you ever got close to being maybe I need to, not Why was Sacramento such a gravitating pull for you? I know you're from there, obviously, but like so many people uproot and go to where the action is. You kind of just made the action in Sacramento. Why was that important for you?
You know, it's funny the way you are. You have a pride about where you come from a young person. I remember, you know, and I didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I enjoyed myself. You know, my dad would drop us off. He'd go to work. He'd drop us off at a pond or a river, and we'd hang out and like the whole day until we got off work. And you know, I'm just familiar with the whole place. And so you always have this pride about where you're from. And then there's a time when you start making a name for yourself where the town appreciates you back, and then it really makes sense of why you stick to your roots a lot of times. And it's the same with, you know, the people you surround yourself with. You don't go. And I remember Dana White and Frank Lorenzo Fertitta would sit down with guys that they knew they were going to throw into the limelight and say, hey, don't drop your friends, don't do this, don't do that, because that happens a lot. People think they need to change everything up. There's some, you know, the people I surround myself with are some of my best friends from elementary school, from high school, from college, and from my MMA journey. And that's important. That's grounding, and it just never appealed to me to go change everything up.
To what extent were any other forces, gyms or businesses or whatever, trying to recruit you out of Sacramento at any point during your journey?
You know, there's like, if you wanted to go pursue entertainment, being out in LA would be good. I actually had a place out in LA for a couple years at the right time where I was literally, I was a baller on a budget on that time for sure. I had there's a jet service called Surf Air, and one of my business buddies had like pre-bought in a corporate deal with it, and he could apply a couple of the people. So for like $500 a month, I had a jet service out of Sacramento, and my other buddy had a place at the W Hotel, Paul Schoen, and I had stayed there after one of my fights. After I fought Scotty Jorgensen here, we were trying to save the Kings, and we did a tour into LA. I stayed at his place, and I was like, hey man, how much would it cost to upgrade this to like the badass one, like over the pool? And he's like, I don't know, look into it. It was like $1,100 extra on top of what he was paying, and it was fully furnished and everything. And so then I bought my brother-in-law's Chevy Nova for $7,500. It was a badass car, but just an old junker, you know. And so I had like a jet service for $500 a month. I could just get on a plane and go to LA, go to Santa Barbara, go to Las Vegas, go whatever. They had flights daily. I had a badass car. It cost me $7,500 in LA, and I had a pimp ass hotel like at the 1600 Vine with like Logan Paul and all those guys. They were all there at that time making their names. And so I got my little taste of being out there, and I lived out here in Vegas for coaching the Ultimate Fighter 3 times.
Jesus.
Once against Dom, once against Conor, and then helping Cody Garbrandt out. So. And I've done traveling all over the world. It's not like haven't seen the world, you know. I've got a place in Mexico. I've got a place on the northern coast, but I just like home.
Going back to WEC for a second, who's the Mount Rushmore of like the romanticized look back at what that meant to watching
like
MMA
who are the top 4 WEC
time?
dogs?
You know, who do you think, you know, whether it's their personality or their performance in the cage or whomever, like should be up there? You're up there, dude. You're up there. You're the face.
Probably Anthony Pettis, Cowboy Cerrone, and Jose Aldo.
That's not bad.
There's a couple of names. See, here's the thing.
That's not bad.
That's not bad, but maybe you got to make some room, because the first time I remember I got friends to watch non-UFC MMA with me was your fight with Pulver.
Oh, yeah.
The Pulver fight. And that fight was record-breaking for WEC.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you could put Pulver on the WEC mantle in the same way you could for Cerrone and Pettis.
Well, the one thing is, I mean, Pulver needs to be in the UFC Hall of Fame. Right. I just saw somebody tweet about this because he was the first UFC champion at 155 pounds. Beat Penn.
Damn.
Did he beat Cal Uno too? I can't remember who all he beat, but he was knocking dudes out. And then he went and had a boxing career, and then they brought him into the WC, but he was a UFC guy. So I don't think he's on the WC, but he should definitely be on the UFC on the mark.
But it'd be you, let's see.
Showtime?
Pettis, It'd be Cerrone.
Jose Aldo.
And it has to be Aldo.
Aldo. You got to put Aldo
Yeah.
on there as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing he is still going? I know Cowboy's still going.
It's amazing how young he is.
I know, but see, like it's like okay, Pettis is kind of doing this thing in the PFL. Maybe he'll win this tournament. I don't know, but he's losing and winning up and down a lot. Cowboy, I think it's fair to say, is probably pretty close to retirement.
Yeah.
Dude, Aldo is still giving these young bucks problems.
At a lower weight.
At a
that
lower
age,
weight
man.
class, right?
I love that guy. I always said I thought he was the best pound for pound guy, and Conor derailed him quickly, but for 12 years he was undefeated in that time. And between his gifts as an athlete, his focus, talk a guy that stuck to his roots.
How hard is it to fight him, dude? Because you fought him at your peak.
Yeah.
And that's when he was also incredible. What was it like where you're just like, fuck, man, this guy really is that good?
Well, they were saying a big thing about the speed. I felt like I was faster than him in the fight, and in the first round, I feel like I was doing really well. And as soon as he got a taste of that, and he just went right to the leg kicks.
Yeah.
And I sat down in the corner after the first round, and I remember I knew that the leg kicks were going to hurt, and I was going to try to push kick instead of check most of them. Worked on that a lot and like moving my leg out of the way. But there was a huge like softball hematoma after the first kick. And I couldn't bend my leg very well, and so I was like, "What the fuck?" I wasn't factoring that in, like
that changed the strategy a little bit.
Yeah, like his kick will change your body and your body's function, and so in retrospect, I probably should have done a lot more checking and less getting out of the way and push kicking.
It's funny because we're, at the time we're recording this, it's a UFC 276 fight week, and so there's this debate about like, is Volkanovski or is Max going to win? And obviously the winner, by some people's estimation, would be the featherweight GOAT. But I actually asked Max about that, and Max said, no, it's still Aldo by a landslide. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's Aldo. I mean, look, even the fact that Volkanovski and Max, there was no doubt when Aldo was the man that he was the man for that stint. Mike Brown, he was a legit guy. Amazing coach now.
People don't know how good he was at WEC.
Yeah,
killer.
He was very good.
Mike Brown, if Mike Brown was a little more outspoken, he'd be one up there, one of the guys everyone's talking about, understated guy. But Aldo took him out like that, and he was a tough guy. And took out a lot of guys like that.
Yeah.
Was it Cub Swanson he took out?
With the double knees.
Double
9
knees?
seconds or something.
Yo,
double knees.
That one Mendes fight, he fucking steamed. I know the second fight was great, but the first one.
The first one, yeah. Yeah, and Mendez, the second one was that was awesome. But, so I think so.
Okay. Nevertheless, though, I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing today. So I noticed there was some big news at the time of this recording. It was yesterday I think it was Evelyn Rodriguez had reported that you are now managing Deiveson Figueiredo.
Yeah.
That's correct, right?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So, I don't know how many people know my story or whatnot, but I started MMA Inc., which is one of the top management companies for a lot of years, managed Anthony Pettis and TJ Dillashaw and Chad Mendez and Chael Sonnen and myself and Joseph Benavidez, Scotty Jorgensen, and the whole gambit back in the day. We were one of the largest management companies for years. And my partners, Jeff Meyer and Mike Roberts, decided to wrap it up around the time they took sponsorships out of the UFC.
Right.
And it was just not fun for them anymore. And at that time, I still had a need for functioning management partners. and I stayed helping guys like Josh Emmett out and a few hand-picked people that were on our teams that I was still helping out with on the management side. But I was the founder of that company before anyone knew who I was. I started managing guys back with, Scott Smith and James Irvin back in the UFC.
James Irvin, haven't heard that name in a while. Yeah.
James Irvin's the man. He works for me at UFC Gym, runs both my gyms. Is
he still jacked as shit?
He's the scary guy.
Hard as shit. People don't give him respect to this day as being
His
like a
flying,
killer.
his flying knee knockout of Terry Martin still stands the test of time.
I've got that picture up at our UFC Gym, Rockland. James Irvin, like understated guy, does mitts all day, runs a whole crew of people that he oversees, and he's a killer. But anyway, so I was doing that management for a lot of years, and once that died out, I really needed help, and so I've been doing a bunch of different things, and I met up with the Vayner group. Mm-hmm. You know, AJ Vaynerchuk and Gary V. Everybody knows Gary V. And they're such a professional team. Lloyd Pearson is running the MMA segment of that. He has Josh Emmett, and he has Song Yadong and myself, and so I work with them as a team. And Figueiredo is a guy that's trained with us in the past. Because Cody was dropping to 125, it was kind of an awkward time to have him come back because he'd been making short stints down to train with us, and we always had a great relationship. And so when he said he needed help, and my jiu-jitsu instructor and longtime coach, and also someone that helps manage the Brazilian side of our team, Fabio Prado, said he wanted to talk to me. I said, yeah, absolutely, and we had a great talk, and I think he's got a lot of potential and could do some big things, and so I'm happy to have me as part of the team that's going to help out a world champion get his.
One of the things that was brought up to my attention, at least in reports in the media, and again, take those for what they were worth, was that he had some issues with he wasn't getting paid enough, and I saw some of the payouts that he got, and they were surprisingly paltry. Now that you're on the management side, having already been on the fighting side, I'm going to ask this sort of broadly, not even so much about Deiveson per se. What is the solution to increasing fighter pay?
You mean it's not crypto?
Yeah, not right now. Okay, sorry.
Well, first off, the pay has gone up tremendously since back in the day, as you know. But we need leverage. I think with more legitimate shows coming up, with more options, even the fact that, like, Habib's got his Eagle promotion. He's actually paying guys decent. And then you've got the PFL, which is kind of partnered with the UFC, it seems like, on the ESPN side. We've got, but they're fighting for big dollars. You've got ONE FC, you've got Bellator. But I think more than that, it's got to be intelligence on the fighter side. Because you can be making a little bit of money and not go over your skis on how you're spending your money. When you have to fight because you're broke, that's when you're fucked, right? And so when we get these fighters to understand how to not be broke, then we can really have the leverage on their side, because then they don't have to fight as much. And I think...
You'd be like saying no to potential offers, like,
oh... I mean...
Is there mandatory UFC training at the PI in this category that needs to happen to help this?
I mean, it would be nice. I wouldn't think that. I mean, the UFC is all about educating their guys. I think it's generational, unfortunately, and you can teach people. Like, for my team, you talk to Chad Mendez, you talk to Cody, probably even TJ, and the list goes on. Josh Emmett. Like, we've discussed this kind of thing as a team for a lot of years, and that's part of what's made us unique. Guys have... Joseph Benavidez has a little real estate portfolio, and like...
And I know Chad has the Fins and Feathers
Fins
thing.
and Feathers, Gills and Thrills, Clay Guida, like... Josh Emmett's got a bunch of different things and understands how to, how to not go broke. I think there's an education process, and that will help. The second thing is... people knowing their worth. And I think like for Figgy, for example, he's out in the jungle in Brazil. People maybe just surrounding him or helping him were probably just not thinking big enough. That sounds like a lot of money to them, whatever he was getting. Oh my gosh, it's more money than he's ever seen. But in the big scheme of things, like, could he live in LA for 6 months with that money?
I don't think he'd live in LA for a long weekend with that.
Yeah. Right, Dana couldn't.
Yo, by the way, you know this already, Figueiredo's a savage. What he did, and you know about staying relevant at an advanced age, what he did at 34 in a trilogy against a guy who just finished him to win back the championship, I don't think that people look at that close enough to see in a lower weight class. That's not normal to see that.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's not normal though. If you touch him, he feels like steel.
Dude, those weigh-ins, I'm like, there's like an unhealthy lack of fat. You know what I mean? Like,
you
can't believe someone can look like that.
It's
He's
crazy.
a savage. He's an absolute savage.
That's the acai, man. We're bringing it to America. You guys want to look like that? Cali acai is coming to you.
Let me circle back, though. So two of the major things that get talked about MMA media, and among fans as well, and fighters too, is there's two major proposed solutions to not just fighter pay, but let's speak to the larger leverage, the lack of power balance between, or the imbalance, I should say, between, let's say, management and talent. One would be an MMA union, and there's been many attempts. They've all failed dramatically. And then the second one would be extending the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act to MMA. Let's start with the union. In theory, because practice is a different matter, in theory, are you in favor of a union?
I've thought about this a lot, like which route I would like to go. I mean, I do like in the entertainment side, like the unions help out a lot. It also can get really weird, and it makes things more even. I don't know if it makes for the same ability to have the superstar. Probably does. I would think, yeah, that would be good if it was done wisely. And people have tried and have been trying for a long time.
You need a strong leader, though. As the face of it. A strong one.
Yeah, you do need a strong leader, but you need a strong leader, and then you need billionaires behind the strong leader, because money wins out on these big confrontations. And the rare thing with the UFC is you had guys that love the sport, the Fertitta brothers and Dana White, who are passionate about the sport, and that's all they're into. And then they had the resources. You can maybe match the resources, but you're not going to match the passion of those guys. Like, they built this thing. That's the hard part there. On the Muhammad Ali Act, that would be a huge key, but it only becomes a big key once the UFC has done their job. Because where are the big stars in any other organization, right? There aren't any big stars in any other organization. I mean, you could say there are, but there aren't.
Right, but the idea would be, like, this is how we got to the four-belt era. It's every time someone who was legitimized fought someone who had the belt that wasn't, that then legitimized it. And so the way would be to open it up, and then that cross-legitimization then adds more stars across the board.
I think that's the key, is if we get that Muhammad Ali Act, that would be the best thing. But and so those that don't know, the Muhammad Ali Act basically just puts every match up for bid. So John Jones and DC are going to fight again, then that would go to bid to every promoter, and every promoter would have an opportunity to be the host of that. And when in turn, to get the fighters to come with them, they're going to have to give more to the fighter and less to them, and that's the way boxing is. So boxing gets to bid on these fights, and they go, okay.
You could still be tied to a promoter, though. It would just be much shorter contracts.
Right.
That's the other part, too. You could just have turnover.
Well, the whole point is you get an automatic negotiation.
Yes.
And if you can't negotiate, you go to a bid.
You go to a bid, yeah. So it changes the dynamic, and that would be great. And there's powers fighting that, and there's powers fighting for it. Who has more money and more passion? That's who's winning right now.
So what is it, in terms of being on the management side, when you think about, let's say Figueiredo, and I don't expect you to give away his contract details, but I'm just thinking strategically, when you think about, okay, how do I get this guy more money? From the management perspective, what is your major task? What do you have to do?
I think first you just have a real conversation with the UFC brass. I mean, they have to know what's standard, and a guy's fought 4 fights for titles and he's getting paid this. I mean, it's not like a secret that what's going on. And I don't know if his manager in the past has ever been able to sit and talk to Dana or talk to Hunter or even Mick and say, guys, this is not fair. I would start with that because I've got a good relationship there. With Lloyd, he has a pretty good roster of people that he's drawing from and has worked with throughout the years, where there's been big contracts done. So you've seen the backside of things, and the Vayner group behind it. They're definitely thinking big. It's not like, hey, our world champion is getting $100,000. It's like, okay, that's weird. That's weird, really, isn't it?
Super weird.
It's super strange, and I think the UFC knows that, and so we'll just have a conversation to start. This is all brand new. Figgy's on his way here from Brazil right now. Sunglasses and belt on.
Shirtless on the plane, definitely.
Yeah. Probably, living it up on the plane right here. But, I think it starts with a real conversation of, guys, it's not fair, and go from there.
You seem to be doing this from a good place to help the sport, and I really respect that, because you're using your brand and your leverage to give back, but you're also able to now be a manager or whatever. So do you get as motivated to sit across the negotiation table from Dana, or whatever thing you're doing on the business side where it is thinking on your feet like in the cage? Do you have you just kind of graduated competition-wise from fighting to now business in that regard?
I do not want to be the guy negotiating with Dana, and I won't be. I'll be the guy that starts a conversation and helps set up a meeting, and I'll be there. But I'm not the key negotiator. I have a management company that I'm a part of that does that.
But do you get amped up for that side of it? Is really what I'm saying. And
I get
the
amped.
chess playing.
I get amped up for business in general. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm part of a group called EO Entrepreneurs Organization. We have a mastermind group that we meet once a month, and I'm learning all the time. I love it, and I've got a lot of things that I'm working on. And business is hard. Business is like the fight game. It really is, and it's not easy. Everybody thinks it's, I've had, I think, 16 gyms spur off of my gym in Sacramento, either members, former employees, former teammates, and it's just that's the fight game, and the business game is like you're in constant battles. And so for me, I feel like I really enjoy that process. Negotiating per se from a management standpoint, I'm going to stay in my lane on the management side. Lloyd Pearson, AJ Vaynerchuk and Gary Vee, those guys will be helping with.
You're a guy that knows a guy. You're a facilitator. You make it happen.
Yes,
I respect that.
In terms of boxing, and obviously boxing's under a different model. They have different regulations. There's different situations. How would you rate the effectiveness of current at-scale MMA management? Like, do MMA managers in general reasonably actually increase the purse amounts that these guys get? Like, I think there's actually a question to be asked about that.
I'm going to tell you, it varies like
far
and wide. And I'm going to there are some managers that are basically just working for the UFC. Like, if you look at Contender Series and one manager has 40 fighters on the Contender Series, and his highest paid guy is pretty low. He's basically just bringing in mid-level talent, and then there's guys that actually have to go and have hard conversations and with the UFC and have to, fight over money. And then there's guys that are just happy to get any kind of money, like probably some of the guys that aren't used to business and haven't seen, big paychecks, and they're like, oh man, that's a lot of money. So it's far and wide. Some people got their uncles managing them, their brothers, their girlfriends.
There's no licensing. Like, to be an NFL agent or manager, you actually have to get licensed to do it.
We had license with MMA Inc. and we went the right way. But yeah, most people are not doing it correctly. Right. You have to have insurance. You have to have all that kind of stuff. Most people are not doing it correctly. And so there's guys that, and it is relationships. So then there's people that are scared of ruining their relationship to get their new fighter in versus going to bat for the fighter that needs to get their money now. And it's a hard balance, I would imagine, for some of these guys who their bread and butter is just bringing in as much talent as possible versus fighting for the mighty dollar. And you need both.
So what's like your management goal? Like, what do you feel like you want to get out of this experience? Like, say if I talk to you in 5 years, what would be an ideal 5-year scenario for you?
I would like my guys to be, first off, educated about taxes, about being smart with your money, about their value of what they're actually worth, have an idea of what is the current market value, and then I want to make sure my guys are getting the most, getting the best.
In terms of like
everything,
purses or whatever.
Purses, outside opportunities, their own. Some people have creative juices, like an Andre Feely, for example, is a guy that has a super creative knack. And so he's got all these things that he wants to do, and he's got his clothing, he's got his music, he's got acting, and he does commentary.
I'm waiting to make that transition.
Kind of right? Then there's other guys like Mike Brown, for example, who knows the sport, keeps to himself, isn't an outspoken guy, and now he's coach of the year. Right? Those are two various things. Like Feely will probably have an entertainment in the limelight type of pathway, and Mike Brown already has a behind-the-scenes pathway.
You were going to say?
I want to talk about one of your projects you have invested in that Andre Touchy-Feely did a great job acting in. It was 2020's Green Rush, which I'm not doing a bit here. You can find it. I think it's streaming right now on a few different sites. But It's a weed thriller.
Yeah.
It's violent as shit. It's a
violent.
great watch. But when the movie opens, this motherfucker's voice is like,
Yes, that's
latest
me.
trends in California
Did you know that? Yeah, I
our
know
wheat
that.
fields are growing.
Yeah.
How does that end up happening that this guy's in the movie that you financed?
That movie. So I have a production company. We do. We've got a bunch of stuff we're working on. But Jared Roxburgh, I met him. He's my partner. I met him on the Ultimate Fighter set, over a decade ago, and we just have a lot of ties in on the MMA space. And we had the writer. One of the writers was also the main character, Telfer, the bad guy.
He was awesome in that
he was
film.
nuts. We had a bunch of the people involved were helping on the set. We
You paid him
killed
in
it with
weed.
that thing.
I know you paid him in weed.
I did not pay him in weed, no. But we shot the whole thing on one place, and the movie was in a 1-day setting, so it was from dusk to dawn, so that was a little bit easier. And we just pulled our resources. People with talent. This guy's got a voice. Face for radio, they say.
Yeah, that's right. It was your, I think it's a mutual acquaintance of ours, friend, Rick Lee.
Yeah.
He hit me up. He was like, "Can you do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I didn't think of it. And then the trailer came out. I go, people started hitting me up on social, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I thought he was just using it like, because you know how it goes.
Yeah.
People have you record stuff, and maybe it makes it, and maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
Or you record a 30-minute interview, and they use 5 seconds or
Yeah.
whatever. So I didn't know what was going to happen, and there it was. It was kind of fun.
And that movie was just basically like, my guy Jared's a great director, writer. He's by trade does editing, and he's been a producer for a lot of things. But that was him like, hey, let's just make this happen. We threw that thing together. Like, we were writing the script as we got the money together and just wanted to do something. It's like, it's so hard to actually do something in that space. It's like you have to jump through all these different hoops. And so it was a huge learning process just to get one under a feather under our cap of making a movie, selling it to Lionsgate, and Feely killed it in there too. Feely's got a bright future.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was shocked at how.
I don't
good it was.
manage Feely, by the way.
Okay, he's just still a friend.
Yeah,
but yeah. Nevertheless,
he's my boy.
No, he's like a father figure to that man. All right.
Maybe so.
He does have my face tattooed on it. He didn't tell me because I know I would have tried to talk him out of that.
So how did you react to that? Because some people would think that's weird, but that's a gesture right there.
Rogan always posts on social whenever when someone tattoos their face on him.
Yeah.
He always tweets or shares it on social.
I mean, it was cool. I mean, honestly, I've given so many guys crap about tattoos in a loving way throughout the years. So that was really hard. No, I don't have one, but
that's rare.
I couldn't hate on him on that front. It was just like really cool. And for him, it wasn't about me. It was about what the team meant to his life. Yeah. And obviously I started the team, so it wasn't like this is of Urijah. That was a representation of his whole experience on Team Alpha.
Do you ever look back on the Dillashaw stuff? And I remember towards the end when the beef was at its peak and then slowly dying, just as an observer, literally as a media observer, even I was exhausted with it.
Oh, see, I'm the opposite. That was like some WWE feud shit. I loved it, dude.
Even I was like, man,
I was like, when are they going to fight for real? I want one in the cage and one in the street.
And it seems like everyone's moved on. Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
He's back. He's doing his thing, whatever. He'll probably get a title shot, depending on how everything goes. When you look back on that whole episode, what lesson do you take from it? Is there one?
Yeah, should have listened to Conor when
There
he saw
wasn't.
that snake wiggling.
No, I think my lesson was, look, because of the setting and really the whole beef between he and I is the misinterpretation of what actually happened. That's my beef, is him saying that one thing happened and me saying that another thing happened. My thing was that he left the team, him saying I kicked him off the team. And I'm like, it's very obvious what really happened. So I don't like the misinterpretation. I could do without all the beef. And now I try to just ignore it. I don't need that kind of drama. People have asked if we're going to fight, and I'm like, unless it's a big friggin' payday, like an extremely big payday, then I don't want that stress of that, and I don't think he wanted the stress of that.
But he was like Bobby the Brain Heenan in Cody Garbrandt's corner. Like, it got pro wrestling, Luke. That's probably why you hated it.
Probably.
Oh, that's funny. I was there to support Cody at the time.
It just seemed never ending and ugly. But the weird part I never understood was, and again, I don't even know what to make of the beef anymore because it was so hard to see what's coming and going. But in the end, it does seem like it kind of changed things, at least from the outside perspective, which is to say, guys after that, I know you have your core team, and a lot of those guys are just the core team, but it does seem like sometimes people come and go, or they take a new coach here or there, and it doesn't seem to be an issue anymore.
It's never been an issue.
It's never been an issue.
The issue is if he's leaving, but he's saying he got kicked off the team.
That's the whole issue.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Oh, I
we've
see.
had plenty of people go. Joseph got married, moved out here with Megan. We have Lance. Look, this is something that people don't understand. My team is like America, right? It's made up of immigrants. Why would you expect and why would you expect Song to come out here and be on our team and never go somewhere else? It's like he came from friggin' China, doesn't speak any English. You know, like why would he be required to stay? Never. Yeah. That was their whole thing. That was their whole thing.
I mean, would you text TJ? Like, do you guys ever shoot?
No, we're not. We don't really talk now.
Dwayne Ludwig blocked me on social media. I don't even know what I did. I like the guy. I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah.
You ever talk to him? You ever see him? You must cross paths on the coaching side of things.
No, that was a whole different animal. That was like a whole separate thing.
issue?
Without the TJ thing, you know? Yeah. No, I don't see him.
But go ahead.
No, you please.
I would have derailed it. I would have been like,
that's fine.
Speaking of, dude, let's talk about him. Yadong is big, man. He's coming on, you know?
Yeah.
You are such a fucking worthless.
Thank you.
But you have to understand.
You're such a worthless.
I'm glad you could tell.
Like, I landed that plane like Sully Sullenberger, though. Like, I put that shit right in the
Yeah,
like,
some people can't
entered
tell.
the engines, and it's a fucking
no, but
disaster.
in full seriousness, I always he was always looked at as your boy, and I remember like a couple of years ago at International Fight Week, you came up to us and we had the cameras, and you were like, you got to interview him. You got like and he's shown some real promise in a division full of sharks.
Yeah.
Where do you think he's at right now in his progression?
I think he can beat anybody. I mean, the one thing I'll say about Song is he's constantly pushing himself to get better, and you know, right now he's been going out and doing some like cross training jiu-jitsu wise with some high level guys, and he's constantly trying out new fitness regimens because he's trying to push himself, and like he's hungry, and he's got his eye on the prize. He believes it. That was the biggest thing with me, is making sure that he believes he's going to be the world champion, and I think he understands now that he's supposed to be the world champ.
How old is Song Yadong?
24.
Jesus, he's just 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, he shows real promise.
He's the #1 fighter under 25 in the world. And then we have Maycee Barber and Corey McKenna that were on that list in the top 10 that are on our team as well.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple other that you're going to know very soon. Kaleo Romero is the guy that I can call champs, and I'm like, Kaleo's going to be a champ. I bought him a bag, 3 years ago that says the champ. And I've been trying to get Shelby to get him in to fight for 3 years, and he's 25 now, I think. And he's a stud. You guys see him on the Contender Series coming up.
When do you think he'll hit his prime? When do you think Song Yadong is going to really... I understand he's getting better all the time, and he's starting to beat really good guys, but I mean, like, not relative to where he stands in the division, well, relative to where he stands at his potential, as possible peak. How far is he from his peak?
Well, I think, like Figgy, these guys are, like, strong and healthy inside and outside of training. That, for me, is the key. That's one of the things that's helped me stay young, is a lifetime of... I'm actually drinking a probiotic right now, Live Cap. This is like a high-level probiotic that's supposed to be like, brain, gut, like and keeping your body as it was when you were born. That's what our goal is, right? Is have the same body as a toddler to a teen to an old guy, and not get, distended and
if there's
how things go.
HGH in there, I'm in. Okay.
I don't even know what's in here. I'm just learning about this. I have nothing to do with it yet. We'll see.
We brought up Maycee Barber real quick. Something's changed. What has changed inside of her?
I think Maycee needed... I had a conversation with Maycee Barber, and she had done so much changing from this to that, to this to that, to this to that, and she was getting some bad advice and just looking at things the wrong way. And I just told her, Maycee, the best you is internal. It's not out here, or this coach, or am I getting this much work, blah, blah. It's like, are you the one? Do you believe it? Do you do the work? She does the work. She has the skill.
There's a monster inside of her.
Yeah. She's a beast. And she had to go out on her own a little bit, and she's, got a great relationship with her family still, but now is like making her own decisions. And I think that's been the key for her.
When does she start working with you? After the 2 losses? Or maybe around the second one?
I'm not sure when her losses were, but yeah, after that, she came back, and
were you with her for the Maverick fight? That was okay, because
that was a tough fight.
You could have scored it against her. It was one of those
it was close
fights.
But Maverick is also like her, a dynamic force on the rise.
Yeah, she's tough too. But yeah, for Maycee, it's basically been that is like, there's no doubt. Like that girl, I was giving her crap because I was like, dude, where were you for morning practice? Or I had something morning call, and she's like, oh, I was on at 5:30. I said, you were sleeping in? And she said, no, I was on at 5:45 with my mind coach, or she had a personal coach. And I go, yeah, right. And then she sent me a screenshot at 5:45, and she's got like 2 people that she talks to early in the morning that gets her mind straight. She's like, she's on top
of ahead of the game right there. Right?
Oh, she's way ahead of the game on that kind of stuff. Like she's doing all the right things, and now it's just gotta come out in the fighting, and she's right there for the chat.
It's all mental, Luke. It's all mental, dude.
Yes, you're a mental midget. How about Mike Malot? Boy, he is an absolute hammer, chiseled out of stone.
Yeah,
he can punch people's lights out. Obviously, he's still developing. He's far from his peak as well. But how did he end up in your stables?
Mike Malot came about 6 years ago to our team, and he was like, first off, trying to cut to 145 pounds for the longest time. Yeah, he's a 70-pounder. He's not grown taller. He's just like let himself go out. And there was a time where he was battling some injuries. We have our team banquet that we have, giving awards and whatnot. And he was the newcomer award back when he came out in Canada. Educated guy, disciplined guy, super skilled. His brother plays pro hockey. He's like comes from a family of athletes, and he took a time where he just decided that he didn't want to hurt anybody, and he didn't want to get hurt. He had been having issues with his head, and so he took like a 4-year hiatus. And in that time, I said, "What do you want to do?" And I molded him, or like switched his role into a coach, because he's so good at jiu-jitsu and he's so good at stand-up, and so it was like a process of blending him in, because I was like, I don't want to lose this guy as a resource because of, he's got a great attitude, he's so knowledgeable, and so we turned him into a coach. He's cornered a lot of guys in championship fights, and then he just got the itch back and was like, I want to fight. He just hit a switch like that, like, I want to fight. And he wanted to fight in the PFL. He's like, I want to go fight in the PFL. I want to go get that $1 million. And I just talked to what's his name who runs the PFL?
Ray Sefo?
Yeah, Ray. Sorry, Ray. I talked to Ray. I said, dude, Ray, I tried to get Malot. He wanted to fight, and he said, oh, he doesn't have enough fights. He hasn't been active enough. And so I said, Malot, we got to get you some fights, and then we can get you in. And then he switched his mind and said, I want to go to the UFC. I go, all right, let's go. And that's a guy we manage, and got him his opportunity. And it was like maybe 6 months after he decided he wanted to fight again, where he was in the Contender Series and
just putting people's lights out.
Yeah, knocking dudes out, submitting people. He had a really high level prospect that he took out that was on the LFA, I think LFA or CCFC, I can't remember, and was having a tough first round, and then iced the dude with one punch. And yeah, he's super focused, and life is on target for him.
Can you give us an update on? It's the forever question for people like me, and maybe he has addressed this, and if he already has, forgive me. Chris Holdsworth. Holdsworth has been a dynamic talent, but I know he had some neurological issues related to concussions. I know he is coaching. Yeah. Is it still just that?
Yeah, for him it is, and he's really taken on business at this point, because he's started his own gym. And
in Sacramento?
In Sacramento, yeah.
Is it affiliated with you in any way?
Other than he's a coach for us still, no. Right. It's Chris Holdsworth. But he's doing awesome. I was hoping that I'd get him to be in our gym a little bit more, but he still helps out with the guys he's been working with, like Josh Emmett and Darren Elkins, and we've got a great relationship. So, yeah, he was a skilled guy. Another guy who had a scare and decided, you know what, I don't want to take a risk with my body, and it makes sense.
have you ever experienced? I asked this for Max because Max says he doesn't spar, which is great.
Yeah.
But you've seen some of Max's fights. Even when he wins, sometimes, man, they're just trench warfare. Yeah. Have you ever experienced? And I know it's a sensitive question, so I don't mean to You ever had any neurological issues? I don't mean like in a fight itself, but after the fight.
No, and I'm kind of the opposite of Max. You don't see me in a lot of like nasty. If you can think back, there's never been like, a big like where I feel like I've lost brain cells and years off my life, per se. But sparring and training is the hard part. You do years and years and years of that. I feel like I've definitely questioned, like, hey, am I going to have some sort of issues in the past? Like I've heard people that are slurring their words and stuff, and that I can tell have some sort of issues, boxers and people that have that type of style. And so I've asked, I'm like, hey, am I am I talking all right?
You sound lucid. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, you beat the game in a few different ways, but you've certainly beat the game in that regard.
Yeah, and so for me, I feel like I have a lot on my plate a lot of the time, so I am a little forgetful. And I don't know if that's from being hit in the head or that's from having a ton of stuff on your plate.
That's just from being 40, bro.
At our age, it's
that's
inevitable.
just being 40. There's nothing else to that. Because I've been hit in the head. I did the exact same shit.
And the other thing that's really hard for me is like, because people know where I'm at. So I can get bombarded throughout the whole day. So, you can only have so many things on your conscious mind at a time. I think it's like 7 for the average person. Like if I'm trying to do me and I'm getting like a barrage of people like in my face with their issues, like I need to like just close myself in a room sometimes. Otherwise it's like
yeah.
But I want to ask about one more fighter in the stable.
Okay, then I got to play the hits, man. I got Uriah Faber on the couch. What are you trying to do?
One more.
Me, bro?
Josh Emmett.
Yeah.
Josh Emmett, big win over Calvin Kattar. He's had a few big wins, but of course that was one, again, at the time of this recording, the most recent one. I will say, 37 years of age, he's an absolute hammer. His power is ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's taken a lot of damage. And that Jeremy Stevens fight, messing up his gums and nerve endings.
As shit, dude.
He must be tough. What is? I can see who Josh Emmett is as an observer watching what he does.
Yeah.
But knowing him more intimately, what can you say about him to that effect?
Man, Josh Emmett, it's like hard to get a paragraph out of him in a long conversation. He's just so quiet, keeps to himself, and he's got a real chip on his shoulder. He feels like, he should have had more opportunities earlier, and I agree. Because of the way he fights and the power in his hands and everything else, he's had some major setbacks, even before he was in the UFC. And it took him forever to get to the UFC. He's another guy, I can go back to emails from 2011 where I'm trying to get him in. He's 6-0, he's 7-0, he's 8-0, he's 9-0, he's 10-0 over a span of years, and him not getting his call. And I don't know if it's because he's quiet or what the deal is, because there's big stints in between his fights on the activity level. But he's actually had a lot less damage in the practice scenario than a guy like myself or guys that have been healthy the whole time through. I've had 46 fights. He's had a handle of fights. I had 44 fights by the time I was 37, and he's had however many. And then I trained all the way through. Never took a break at all. I never. Took
dude,
vacation.
Your longevity is sick. It's sick.
But Josh, he's been on that same path, but he's been training smarter for longer, and then he's had fewer fights. But when his fights go down, it's power and explosion, and he's had some bad breaks in his hands and the few things on his head with, that one where he had his face crushed was just heartbreaking.
The Jeremy Stevens fight.
The Jeremy Stevens fight. It was bad, and it was, in my opinion, an illegal knee that learned into some after the, unnecessary blows, and I'm like, didn't need to happen, And he already had a knockdown on Jeremy Stevens that way, so that fight puts him in the title contention right there.
Dude, even his win over Shane Burgos, he had to empty the tank. That was a all-in win right there.
How about Holtzman? Holtzman,
Hot Sauce, Scott Holtzman.
Hot Sauce, Holtzman. Dude, that was a friggin' war in Sacramento, and Holtzman's no joke. And that was like a who moves on kind of scenario, but those guys were pretty damn even, and it just came down to willpower and being a little bit better on the day.
You think it seems like the Kattar win is going to get him a title shot. Now, we don't know who it's going to be, but
it's got to get him a title shot.
It's the best position he's ever been in.
It's the best position he's ever been in, but I mean, why not? It's like, I was a human development major, and they always talk about, like, if you're going to be a teacher, the quiet kid gets overlooked a lot. It's always the mouth that's talking, and the kid that has trouble or whatever. Like, the good quiet kid just doesn't get as much attention, doesn't get as much nurturing, and as somebody that's in a role to develop humans, you have to give that person their time. But in the promotion game, they get overlooked. It's fucked up. It's his time.
All right, I got a Urijah Faber here. I got to play the hits with the California Kid. Take me back to 2016, 3 months before you end up getting the trilogy with Dom Cruz at UFC 199. The phone rings, and they're like, yo, RDA's hurt. Conor needs a dance partner for UFC 196.
Oh, yeah.
It came down to you and Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
What was that phone interaction like, and how bad did you want that fight in that moment?
Oh, man. I wanted that fight. Not because I dislike Conor. I actually love Conor. Like, we have hilarious conversations on DM all the time. He's a riot. But that's the fight, And he knows that. I know that. That was the fight for me. And so Dana's like, hey, kid, I know I told you weren't going to get this fight, but we need you to step in. And this is at 55s. I'm a 35-pounder. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. And so then he's like, okay, let me see. And I go, what's going on? Like, he goes, you're our guy, and like blah blah. And he's like blowing smoke. And I go, all right, what's going on? I know Frankie, I know Aldo, I know Pettis, I know Cowboy, I know I know Nate Diaz. So I start doing some research, and Frankie Edgar was injured. Pettis was coming off Cowboy was coming off a loss to RDA, and so Conor said, I'm not fighting him off a loss. Pettis had been injured as well, or he was on a skid. He was on a couple fight skid.
Mm-hmm. That was around when RDA knocked him out.
Aldo didn't want the fight, and then Nate Diaz told him to fuck off because they wanted to extend his contract. And I'm buddies with all these guys. Like, that's one of my valuable traits is I can get to anyone and find out what's going on. And so all those guys are out, and Dana's like, you're the guy. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's why I'm the guy at the moment. They go up 2 weight classes and fight. And then...
So why'd you lose it? How'd you not get it?
So then they go back to Nate. So Nate says, F you, hangs up on him because they wanted him to extend his contract from 40 and 40. They wanted to give him like 50 and 50 on like a 7-fight deal or something, and he was getting so drastically underpaid. And so then they're like, they were going to pay him $1 million, but extend his contract. And then Conor says, I want Diaz. Conor made the call. He didn't want to fight me. Like, we're kind of friends too, and I'm coming up 2 weight classes. He's got nothing to lose, nothing to win there. His only losses are submissions. I've got the most submissions at the time in UFC, WC, and Pride combined. Me and Nogueira were tied for it at the time. And so he said he wanted Nate, and so they had to go back. And because Conor wanted Nate, they had to go pay Nate. And Nate made out like a bandit on that. I was there the whole time because I talked to Nate, and I knew the whole shebang. And Lloyd, who's actually, my partner at the Vayner group, who's helping with Figgy and all my guys, he's the one that did that deal with Nate and Conor.
Not bad. Yeah. Look, you would have been up at 55. I think people would assume it's more likely that Conor would have stopped you, but he imploded that night against Nate anyway, so there were ways to blow up that Death Star. How would you have approached that fight?
I mean, the one thing that would have been an advantage for me, and it happens all the time, is speed. I mean, I used to have the worst trouble with Joseph Benavidez because he was so friggin' fast. He was my hardest sparring partner. I go with Danny Castillo, and I go with, Justin Buckles at those times, and other 55-pounders, and I would have an easier time with them than I would with Joseph because Joseph was so fast. Yeah. The other thing would be if you saw Chad take Conor down, Chad broke his hand on the first punch on ground and pound when he fought Conor.
Damn.
In that fight,
like that?
Yeah, but Chad took him down like that.
Maybe.
And so I would have tried to use speed and then do everything to get it to the ground. Because, Conor hits like a truck, obviously, and he's got precision, and he's a big guy.
Conor's been too successful, right? I mean, he's gotten so good. He's gotten so many options. He doesn't have to do jack shit, especially with all the alcohol money he's made. You know?
Yeah.
Do you think he comes back? What do you think? I know
think
he says
so.
he wants to, but like,
What are you gonna?
He's stupid wealthy.
Look, when I retired from fighting, I found myself in practice every day. You know what I mean? Like, he's built a habit, and he's got an internal thing. You don't fight for money. I mean, you could say you're fighting for money or whatnot. The guys that are fighting for money have very short careers. He's got an internal desire to show that he's the baddest guy on the planet. Now, whether he's been cushioned up a little bit because of all the perks that he has from being the wealthiest athlete in the world at this point, or for that 1 year at least, who knows? But that doesn't change who you are, or you think you're the baddest dude. You know, that's like an internal thing. So I think he probably will fight. Yeah.
170?
I think he should fight 55. I mean, he looks jacked right now.
He looks huge.
Yeah, he looks huge. Oh, 170.
You think he comes back to a title fight?
I don't know about that. Probably not. But I mean, yeah. I mean, if he
like
wants it,
like a Tony Ferguson, like that type of match.
if somebody has the title that he's interested in, yeah. But he doesn't. He's not about the title as much anymore. I think he wants the bigger fights. You know, which I don't blame him. Like, those are the ones that are going to get him paid since he gets a cut of everything. You know.
Also, like, do you think it's the Diaz trilogy? Do you think we see a trilogy with them?
That'd be great for both those guys. I hope
Max
so.
rematch. Max rematch is going to happen.
Max rematch is there
happen.
too. He's got a lot of irons on the fire. He can go to the Dustin Poirier.
Oh, he can go to
fight again.
Masvidal wants him bad.
Masvidal wants a piece of him. They all kind of want a piece
I think
of him.
Masvidal and Conor would be a good one because, you know, Conor's gotten a lot bigger and they're both sluggers, and yeah, I think that'd be a good one.
When you reflect on your entire journey in MMA, from fighter, and you've done clothing, and you've done now management, and everything else in between, it's been a hell of a journey. I wonder, like, is there a singular way you think about, like, what it takes to succeed in MMA? Like, what is the truth of that push?
I mean, obviously, success is a pretty internal thing. Like, where are you happy and content? And I've talked to guys that are pretty happy and content, like, where they're at. So that's a big win, you know, being happy with where you're at. But for success, I would say, like, are you asking for what is the measure of success, or how do you get success?
How is it possible that there must be something A, about you, but B, about what you understand about the industry, that you have navigated it so successfully with so many different hats on? That's what I'm saying.
You know, for that kind of thing, I would say, first off, I'm a people person, and I try not to have enemies unless they, like, choose me. You know, even Dominic Cruz, I feel like he always chose me as an enemy, and at this point, we're cool. And I, you know, have a short memory when it comes to that kind of stuff. I think working extremely hard is step number one. I don't play video games. I don't like do all the leisure shit.
You don't vape, is what you're saying.
I don't vape. I don't. Yeah. I don't chill. Like, I'm like go mode. Like, I try to squeeze as much into my day as possible, and then the number one ingredient for anybody's success anywhere, you guys and everyone, is just how big are you thinking. Like, so many people are afraid or ignorant to thinking big. They just don't understand all that they can do. You know, you can do a lot, and you can accomplish a lot, and people are not thinking big enough. And I've met people of all different walks, self-made billionaires and you know, actors and athletes and you know, kids on their fighting cancer, that on their deathbed, on their before puberty. It's like, you know, the mind is the key. You got to believe, and then you have to not be deterred on all the negative stuff, because there's going to be negative stuff over and over again. You're not going to not be anxious or not be scared or feel like everyone's against you, or you know, feel like it couldn't get any worse. You know, that shit is happening for sure. Just like if you're in a fight, you're going to get hit. So
you got this surfer zen thing that kind of just regulates you, it rights you, and you just flow.
I mean, what other choice do we have? You're either dead or trying, you know.
Well, you can do what I do, which is just live anxiety-ridden and paranoid at all times.
Well, but you're having success.
A little bit.
Right?
Yeah,
You're
I'm
here
doing all
today.
right.
You got your beautiful daughter. Like,
It's true. It's
like
true.
you're rolling, dude.
You got me, Luke.
I've got this just absolute
Yeah.
jamoke I'm stuck with, but he's pretty good too. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And I try not to put a value on material things. Like, I'm like, you know, like I try not to think about money, but I'm always trying to make fun ways to where I can have some so I can keep doing what I want. And that's been a big key. Like, I see people that focus on this. And there's been times when I've been, you know, I never had huge paydays for most of my career. It was like, you know, there's been times where I've been pressed for cash and whatnot, and you just don't worry, just keep going. Right?
Well, you had a knack for, even as a fighter in the second half of your career, finding your way back into title fights. And that's a skill on top of also being really good enough to justify it. Like, you seem to maneuvered your career in, like I always look at Sugar Ray Leonard on the boxing side and say, like, you know, him, Floyd, like, those guys beat the game. They came out of this death trap of an industry and are, like, better off for it and are now doing all these things. You even had that kind of mojo, you know, while still an active fighter.
Because people...
You slithered well.
I don't know how many times in Ariel, I always make fun of Ariel for this. I'm like, how many times like, is this it? Is it over? And I'm like, why would it be over? Like, you've had 2 title shots. It's like, yeah, I was in the Super Bowl, and I lost the Super Bowl. Like, if you aren't the reporter of the year, are you going to quit? She took second? Like, come on. Like, what is the logic behind that?
All the podcasts.
You know? So, like, honestly... It's like just completely about interpretation on things. It's like people just, how are they taking things in and interpreting them is so different. And when you can just stick to what you want to believe, I think that's the key. 2 things, I always say this, and I started like pointing this out. 2 things that are great that people put a bad rap on. One is making excuses. I'm great at making excuses. Why did I lose to Dominic Cruz on 2011? Well, the judges were looking at the wrong crap, in my opinion. That's my excuse. Had I had a more output, then hopefully they would have gone my way, meaning throw more punches like in a volume sense, right? You got to make excuses that you can fix, right? If you can make an excuse that you can fix, like, well, shit, he threw this many more punches than I do. Okay, well, I can fix that. I can try to throw that many punches or more, and then you can time it and do that. You know, if you have beliefs that and excuses that you can't fix, those are bad. The second thing is being delusional. Connor's delusional. That dude's delusional, but it panned out, right? It really did.
The magic somehow made that delusional.
It panned out, and I've met real, you know, even like a Gary Vee, who's a guy that. When I first started seeing Gary Vee's stuff on Instagram, he had a little bit fewer followers than I did. Now he's at like 11 million. He made all his focus on growing his social media outreach, and he wrote a book about it, and he's used it to, you know, has a marketing company, has all these different brands that have built off of that, and people pay him to do this and do that. And that's where he set his focus, but he just believed it, you know? And Joseph Benavidez, I remember when he first came down, and he used me as an example of like, hey, you're the guy, and I was getting paid when he moved down. I think I was getting paid maybe $4,000 and $4,000 to fight, and he's like, you're the biggest name guy in the sport for the lightweights. That's what I want to do, and I'm thinking, dude, I'm making like $8,000, you know, every 4 months, you know, like.
And facing killers, dude.
But,
you faced like your WEC run is fucking killers across the board, like. It's wild, man, to look back at that. And also, you know, to speak to your longevity, 2 of my favorite fighters as a fan along that time, Mike Thomas Brown, Baron Barao, they beat you, then they just disappeared. And then you just kept going, more title fights after that. So it's like you were in big fights, and even if you didn't win it, because you always bounced back and because you always sought out another big name, you got that respect along with it. You know, you didn't have to be a full-time brawler to get that respect. You got that respect in the way that you sort of handled yourself. So.
Well, just stay in the game. I mean, people quit early. I talk about that all the time too. I wasn't the best high school wrestler. I did pretty good, and then I went on. I was top 12 in the state in California. Then I went on with the same mentality, work ethic, and I was top 12 in the nation. I took second at University Nationals. And then guys that I beat or lost to got into MMA for a little bit, and then they petered out. But I stayed there 20 years. You know, if I fight this year, that'd be 20 years as a combat athlete, and that doesn't include my wrestling. That's just as a professional mixed martial artist. So that's kind of tempting. I don't know.
And if you would have beat Jan, you would have fought for a title in your next fight. I mean, it's wild.
And I
you
wanted
were that
to fight
close
Jan.
again, dude. I mean,
I know. That's those are the risks you take. You know, those are the risks you take.
Well, I got to tell you, you've taken a lot of risks, but a lot of them have paid off, man. You have done so well for
including
yourself.
sitting on this couch.
Hey,
Big risk.
today was a big day.
Today was a big day. I
Today
mean,
was
this
a
is a
big day.
milestone. You won't soon forget. I was like, Uriah, was this your number in your phone? Because we had a whole miscommunication. And I was like, no, I've actually never had that number. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, never had a 702. I know we've talked before, though.
We've talked. I've had you on every version of every show I've ever had. I remember you did a meet and greet one time for an old Mid-Atlantic promotion. Remember UWC back in the aughts? And you came out there. We talked all the time back then, too. I've been covering your career for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for making yourself accessible. But seriously, in all seriousness, for a guy who has seen everything from all the way from Gladiator Challenge to WEC and then everything else, dude, you are not relevant by accident. It is not an accident.
Well, I appreciate that.
So we appreciate you making some time for us.
Yeah.
And we'll do this again in 20 years. We'll
You
be
want
able
to
to
pump
shit.
any
You'll still look
products?
the same.
Buy this
hope
man's
so.
products. What do we got coming out?
Yeah, we had Cali Acai. So if you've heard of Trifecta Nutrition, that's
Of course.
a business that I'm
They
involved with.
ship you the meals.
They
pre-made.
ship you meals directly,
Yep.
and it's the best food. My kids are built on that stuff. I'm going to do the same thing with the acai. Not only are we going to be in a lot of, mom and pop places for jiu-jitsu and gyms, etc., but we're going to be able to ship the best acai on the planet to you directly. So that's coming soon. And then, as you know, we have all these fighters coming up. So check us out there. We've got a great stable of fighters that are really making a name for themselves on their own, which I love.
Yo, make a Green Rush sequel, bro. Make a
And
sequel.
we got movies coming too. So.
Make a sequel of that shit, all right?
That
You got
was
Luke
that was
Thomas
just
back in it?
that was the worst movie we're ever gonna make, but it was still great.
I love it.
Yeah.
It was really great. Congratulations. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time. Uriah Faber, ladies and gentlemen. Uriah Faber.
Hey,
There he is.
we did it.